And as promised, the rare double dip here on the Rich Eisen Show, not just because Bob Costas is on the program, that's not rare, but to have Bob on to talk about Ohtani and Pootie Tang. Joining us here, fresh off of calling Astros Cardinals for MLB Net last night, Bob Costas. How are you, Bob?
You know, that made it sound as if Shohei Ohtani was in Pootie Tang.
No, that's true.
Was somehow missing on the credits along with Wanda Sykes and Chris Rock and J.B. Smoove, which would be an outrage.
Well, or the I guess unique battery of Ohtani and Pootie Tang. But I don't think the Angels have a catcher named Pootie Tang. I don't believe. I don't know.
I believe they would say about that. They would say the Nano, my Danny.
Ladies and gentlemen, Bob Costas has arrived here on the program. All right, let's take Ohtani first. Let's jump in there. Is there in any way, shape, or form a comp? You know how we talk comps in this business, right?
Yeah.
How do you place in perspective what we are seeing from Shohei Ohtani in 2023, Bob?
There is no comp because Babe Ruth, who was on a Hall of Fame track as a pitcher in the early part of the 20th century, never really did pitch and bat simultaneously at anything like the level Ohtani has. Now, Ruth's batting exploits in the context of his time are greater than anything Ohtani is even doing now in this remarkable streak he's on, or period of time that he's on. Ruth stands alone in that respect, his statistics in the 20s and early 30s as a hitter. But he never did it simultaneously. There were a handful of pitching performances after he joined the Yankees, but the Hall of Fame pitching performances are as a Red Sox. That's really the only historical comp. Now, if you want to say that as a hitter, and since he doesn't play the field, he's not the player that Willie Mays was, or a pre-steroid Barry Bonds, or Hank Aaron, or a healthy Mickey Mantle, or whoever you want to mention, or Mike Trout, his teammate, for that matter, when Trout was at his very best. Or that as a pitcher, remarkable as he is, he's not Sandy Koufax, or he's not Pedro Martinez or Randy Johnson at their best, or historically difficult as it is to compare eras, that he's not Walter Johnson or Christy Mathewson. But nobody has ever been simultaneously both a hitter and a pitcher at anything like the level that Ohtani has achieved. Plus, he's doing it in a modern era, which makes comparisons difficult to begin with. The word unicorn has been thrown around about him for years now, and it's actually the best one. He is. People use the word unique, like they'll say it about something. It's very unique. No, unique takes no modifier. It's either unique or it isn't. Okay? So most of the time when someone says something is unique or somebody's unique, they're not. Ohtani is unique.
He definitely is, Bob. I honestly can't stress enough to this audience, as I did at the top of yesterday's program, just how not normal this activity is. He is truly unbelievable, and certainly in light of the fact that when he first started, the general sense of it was, well, he can't do this for more than just years. So just enjoy the year that he's hitting and pitching. You know, and he's gotten better, and he doesn't seem show any sign of diminishing returns at all.
No.
At all.
No. And when some team signs him, now the best guess is $600 million over 10 years or whatever, it is entirely possible, to your point or your implied point, that at the back end of that contract, maybe the second half of that contract, he will not be the Ohtani we are seeing now. But for the time being, he is clearly the most valuable player in all of baseball. When I was on your show last year and there was a Judge Ohtani argument, I said, and I think correctly, the Judge deserved to be the MVP last year because MVP is most valuable player of a given season, not who's the best overall player in baseball. If that were the case, Willie Mays would have won the MVP or shared it with Hank Aaron every single year for like 20 years in the National League. MVP is a single-year question. And last year, especially given where their respective teams were, Aaron Judge was the American League's most valuable player. But Shohei Ohtani, by a wide margin, even given the likes of Ronald Acuna Jr. and others, Shohei Ohtani, by a wide margin, is the best player, and year to year, during this portion of his career, the most valuable player in all of baseball and also the most valuable business property. Nobody moves the needle for baseball as an entertainment product and as possibly a fan base expanding individual like Ohtani does. If you could read Rob Manfred's mind, and he said there's only one current player that you can put on the lifeboat. That player is going to be Shohei Ohtani.
Bob Costas, Hall of Fame broadcaster, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. And that's what makes this scenario or moment unique. Notice I didn't say more unique or quite unique. Just I think I did that properly. Is the fact that we have sung all the proper hosannas here, Bob, and he could be on the trading block in a month if the Angels don't continue to win. I mean, just again, last night, he and Trout hit back-to-back triples in the first inning, and they lost by 6 runs. It's just unbelievable sometimes how you see two of the best players of a generation hitting in the same lineup, let alone protecting one another in the lineup, and the team doesn't win consistently enough. What are you hearing or believing about that subject matter of Ohtani and the trade deadline that looms, Bob?
Yeah, it's long been the consensus opinion that the Angels have no shot at keeping him, in large part because they haven't been able to build a consistent contender or a contender at all, although they're certainly in the wild card mix now. When you think about a possible trade deadline deal, if you're the team acquiring him, you have to have a very strong sense that you have a good chance to sign him. Otherwise, you're going to have to give up something that makes it look like what the Padres gave up for Juan Soto to the Nats a while back, like nothing, like a pittance. Are you going to empty your farm system and plus include some useful present major league players to acquire Shohei Ohtani for half a season and then maybe not make the playoffs and get bounced out in the wild card or divisional round, and now you've gutted your team and Ohtani winds up someplace else? So I think the actual market, given those circumstances for a trade, is less than people would think it would be. Would every team like to have him? Yeah. Do only a handful of teams have even a realistic shot at retaining him? That's also true. Now look at it from the Angels' perspective. Artie Moreno, has a team that has a chance, at least as we speak, to get to October, which baseball would love, to showcase Ohtani especially, but also Trout. If he were to trade him, it sends a terrible message to his fan base. He just gave up. What Moreno can do is hang on to him and then say, look, we made every effort to re-sign him. This is what we put on the table. We did everything. We emptied our pockets. If he stays, hallelujah. If he doesn't and he leaves, you can't blame us, and we wish him well. I think that's the most likely scenario.
What would a free agency tour for Shohei Ohtani look like, Bob?
Well, I think it involves both New York teams.
Yes, it does.
Perhaps Steve Cohen is chastened. Money does not buy happiness at Citi Field, apparently. But it will involve both New York teams. It might very well involve Seattle, which has shown a willingness to make bold moves and spend, and there's a very large Asian fan base there. Although Ohtani has across-the-board appeal. I don't want to limit it to that.
Of course.
It's a big deal when someone like Ichiro comes along because he was the first Japanese position player of any consequence, non-pitcher, to come to the American major leagues, and then he turns out to be a Hall of Fame talent. So any team would want to have him, but you have to have the market, you have to have someplace that's comfortable, you have to have a team that is an immediate contender, not building toward contender status. So once you check all those boxes, you've reduced it down to only a handful of the 30 teams.
Sure, you'd have the Dodgers would obviously be in the mix. The Angels, there could be another
Giants.
team. Giants, yeah. And
I should have mentioned the Dodgers. That's obvious. Some people, Rich, think that part of the reason the Dodgers let Trey Turner go and have reduced payroll somewhat, it's all relative, is that they're saving up to make a run at Shohei Ohtani, which is logical.
Yeah, no question about that. And we were just thinking about it on yesterday's show as well, the free agency tour would look like just in New York when Ohtani arrives, maybe, out there at Teterboro Airport, coming over the George Washington Bridge, the Yankees and Mets jockeying for the first visit with him? Do you read into who visit and he goes from the Mets to the Yankees? He'd be followed by cameras everywhere, I would think, and front back pages. And this would probably happen as the Jets and Giants were finishing up the season, hopefully for both teams a playoff run. And that's the question about whether Ohtani would be into that. Does he like playing baseball down the street from Disneyland where, there's an Orange County Register reporter, maybe, an LA Times reporter, some international interest, and that's about it. Like, not a lot of long-time listener, first-time callers flipping out over an 0 for 4. Boston obviously would have to be involved in this free agency tour as well. Just throw that in there. So that's the question. What do you know about his interest level in that type of atmosphere, do you think?
I can't pretend to have any real insight into that on a personal level. I have never met nor spoken to Ohtani. But your point is correct about New York. The tabloids would have a field day with it, and his personal sensibility plays into this. As you've just said, if he just wants some peace and quiet, he's going to make a gazillion dollars no matter what. If he just wants some peace and quiet and a chance to be the best baseball player he can be, which is an historic baseball player, maybe he doesn't choose the biggest stage or the biggest spotlight.
Bob Costas here on the Rich Eisen Show. All right, I'm going to do my best, make the transition from Ohtani to the 22nd anniversary of the unspooling, I think is the proper word, in theaters near you, of Pootie Tang. And I'm speaking to one of the stars, I'll say it, of Pootie Tang, and you, Bob Costas. How did you get involved in Pootie Tang, Bob? How did that happen?
Well, knowing of my extensive filmography, which even at that time in the early 2000s included the near Oscar-nominated Basketball alongside Al Michaels, and an appearance in the scene with Jason Robards and Glenn Close in The Paper. Leave aside the fact that it was me standing at a urinal when Glenn mistakenly walked into the men's room at Radio City. It's a very long story, but Ron Howard called me literally the day before. He said, "Are you in New York?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you have a tuxedo?" I said, "As it happens, I was at a banquet last night. I do have a tuxedo. Put it on and come over to Radio City tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So that's how that happened. Now, regarding Pootie Tang, Chris Rock calls me. It's Chris Rock. So, of course, I say yes. The title was a little interesting, especially in 2001 or two. But, hey, it's Chris Rock. And so as it turned out, it was very loosely scripted. I sat with Pootie on the set of my then HBO show.
Yes.
And it framed the whole movie, the beginning scene and the end scene. And there wasn't really a script. There were just a couple to get to these things. And we ad-libbed almost all of it and got all of it in 2 takes for 2 scenes. In 2 takes. And in 45 minutes, we were done.
I was going to ask how many takes it took for these scenes to be completed.
Each.
Okay.
1 each.
So, Chris Rock, had you ever...
After all, when you have perfection, even Scorsese would just say cut.
So, did Chris get your number? Were you friendly with him, or did you just answer your phone? And
let's put it this way.
Yeah.
Chris Rock can get anybody's number.
That's true.
Yes, I had interviewed Chris Rock before that. We had interacted occasionally. If you want a parenthetical aside, since you seem to be kind of in a loose mode here,
yes, sir.
There are people who can get anybody's number. The morning after Barry Bonds hit 756 to pass Hank Aaron, I was on the Today Show to talk about it.
Yes.
And Bill Rhoden of the New York Times was taking kind of a pro-Barry Bonds position, like, there's nothing to see here, he's just the greatest home run hitter. And I countered that using logic and evidence. Okay, now I'm back at my apartment just a few minutes later. It's now maybe 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, and the phone rings. I say hello, and the woman on the other end says, "Mr. Costas?" I say yes. "Please hold on for President George H.W. Bush."
Oh, wow.
And on comes the unmistakable voice of the 41st president. But I'm thinking it's just Dana Carvey pranking me. And it takes quite a while for this to sink in that it's really him. And I wish I could do an impression even half as good as Harvey's, but he's telling me how much he approves of what I said about Bonds and Aaron. And then, just to make small talk, George H.W. Bush then says, you know, Bob, I'm just sick about what they did to our pal Ted Williams. They froze his ass down there with some cryogenics in Arizona. I'm just sick about it, Bob. When a former president says that, it's just, I'm trying not to laugh. And I'm just, yes, Mr. President, I share your concern.
What else can you say? Oh, my God. Oh, that is so funny. So that's fun. So you get a cold call from Chris Rock and George H.W. Bush. I mean, that's you, Bob.
Right.
That's
not on the same day, but Rock invites me to take part in this movie. I don't hesitate for a second. Sure, what the heck?
Oh, my gosh.
And now it's kind of a cult classic.
It is. You're not wrong. 22 years later. So you said it was loosely delivered, right? So what is your ad lib from Pootie Tang, Bob Costas, that you are most proud of?
Actually, now that I think of it, there were 3 scenes.
Mm-hmm.
2 with Lance Crouther, who was Pootie Tang, and then one in the middle with the great Wanda Sykes, who played Biggie Shorty in the film. I don't know, what was my best ad lib? I ad libbed a series of background credits that Pootie Tang had, and I believe I included crocheting and pottery among them. To show what a well-rounded individual he was.
Oh, my God.
And then at one point he started speaking Pootie speak, and I had to correct him. That I, at that point, by the end of the film, understood Pootie speak apparently better than he did. But none of it was scripted. Now, it doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to. But in the first few years after the release of the film, I could be like in the jetway getting on a plane or sitting in a diner someplace, and someone might say, Bob, Wa-Da-Tah, my brother, Wa-Da-Tah. And I would just have to respond, yes, my man, going to sign your pity on the runny kind.
That is it sticks with you. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. The paper, that's pretty cool. I forgot about that one.
It was very cool. And, you know, Academy Award winners. I guess Glenn Close never won an Academy Award. She's been robbed.
She has been
nominated 10 times.
Yeah.
Never won. Should have won multiple times. But anyway, Jason Robards and Glenn Close. And what was interesting about that, for whatever reason, they had to do like 5 or 6 takes. So I had to pretend to have to go desperately 5 or 6 times. Each time, Jason Robards did it exactly the same. Yeah. The inflection, every word, down to the comma, exactly the same. But Glenn Close had little variations every time. And her last flourish was she realizes as she stops, looks around, oh, my gosh, I'm in this giant, ornate men's room. I'm where I don't belong. And on the take they used, she wheels around, and like there are in many kind of elevated locations, there was a basket with hand towels, not paper towels, a basket. She'd walked in. She'd not done anything. She picked up a towel. She pretended to wipe her hands, and she threw it against the wall and walked out. But if we'd done it 100 times, Robards would have been exactly the same every time, and she would have thrown in a little variation each time.
Amazing, Bob. Bob, thanks for the time, as always. Great to catch up with you. Have a great All-Star break, I guess. And
thank you.
You know, and I was saying the other day that if Elly De La Cruz has another good 3 weeks, he should make the All-Star game. And then he went like 1 for his next 14, so I think I put the Ziggy on him. But I love watching that kid play.
Maybe you did, but I think more and more the All-Star game is being seen as a showcase for the people that baseball wants the whole country to embrace.
Right.
The game doesn't mean all that much anymore. It's not the real National and American League rivalry because of player movement and interleague play. So you really want to get someone like Elly De La Cruz to Seattle if you possibly can. While we're on the subject of baseball.
Yes, sir.
Can I throw this in here? It's kind of something to get off my chest.
Oh, yes, Bob Costas.
Last year we were talking about Aaron Judge and the MVP, but most important, whether if he hit 62 as he did, some people would view that as the authentic home run record, since everybody who has hit more than 62
Yes.
is directly connected to steroids. And you get this reaction now and then. And it's one thing if someone makes a cogent argument with which you disagree, but you can at least respect it. One of the dumbest things ever that's been out there forever is this. Oh, okay, so Bonds or Sosa or McGuire use steroids. But hey, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Mickey Mantle have said that they use greenies. It's a wash. Case closed. Where was the distortion of baseball norms during their eras? None.
Right.
None. Zero. Okay? Amphetamines, whether you approve of them or not, amphetamines are a performance enabler. They allow you to do, during a day game in August at the back end of a road trip, what you could have done if you were fresh in May. There's no distortion. Steroids are a performance enhancer. And the evidence of that is so overwhelming that concluding that there's any possible comparison between the two is only evidence of how dumb the person making that assertion is.
Bob, I appreciate the 2 cents, and I'm
there you go.
So I should say, Bob from St. Louis, you're on the air. You're a long time listener, many time caller. Thanks, Bob. I really appreciate it, the time and everything.
See you, Rich.
You be well. Bob Costas, Hall of Famer, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.